Hello there, welcome to Sleepumentary. Tonight, as you ease into the quiet of your room, let's step together into a story that begins not on Earth but far beyond it in the endless dark between the stars. In 2020, astronomers detected something unusual. At first glance, it seemed like yet another comet, one of those icy travellers that streak through our skies with long glowing tails. But this one was different. It had a name that carried a mystery all its own. 3i, Atlas, the third interstellar object ever confirmed to enter our solar system. That simple designation interstellar already set it apart. Unlike most comets born in the Oort Cloud or Kuiper Belt, this one came from outside. A wanderer from another star system carrying secrets of a place we may never see. Astronomers expected it to follow a somewhat predictable path, tugged by gravity, nudged by solar winds, behaving like a frozen relic of deep space should. But the more they tracked it, the stranger it seemed. Its trajectory was sharp, almost deliberate, threading a course that brushed past Venus, skimmed near Mars, and arced toward Jupiter. These alignments were not only rare, they were breathtakingly improbable, the kind of chance arrangement that makes scientists lean back in their chairs and wonder if pure randomness is really the whole story. Here curiosity began to stir. Could this object so precisely placed be more than frozen? Ice and dust. Was 3i Atlas a messenger, or perhaps even a machine? Some scientists dared to whisper what others only thought: the possibility that this might be an alien reconnaissance probe moving with intent as path toward Earth, guided not by accident but by design. The thought was startling, even unsettling. Humanity has looked to the skies for millennia, but usually we imagine ourselves as the ones searching for life. What if this time it was the other way around? What if something was searching for us? The idea hung in the air like an unanswered question. And as we begin this journey tonight, let's not rush for certainty. Instead, let's linger in the mystery, letting it unfold like the slow turn of the heavens overhead. Before we continue, if this tale keeps you company tonight, leave a like and subscribe, only if it truly feels natural. And now softly tell me, where are you listening from, and what hour has the night brought you? The first thing astronomers noticed about 3i Atlas was that its orbit simply didn't behave like the ordinary paths of comets or asteroids. Most bodies in our solar system follow a counterclockwise motion circling the Sun in what astronomers call a prograde orbit. But 3i Atlas moved against the grain, cutting across the flow of planets like a swimmer moving upstream. Retrograde fast and fleeting, it carried the signature of a true outsider. Its course was not random drifting. No, the object threaded its way past three of our most familiar neighbours, Venus, Mars and Jupiter, in a sequence so unlikely that many scientists paused to calculate just how improbable it was. The chance of such a precise alignment happening by accident, barely a fraction of a percent. To some, it felt as though the universe itself had drawn a line across the solar system, a line that happened to pass very close to Earth. We've seen interstellar visitors before. In 2017, the mysterious Oumuamua blazed through our skies, long and cigar-shaped, tumbling end over end. It too defied easy classification, moving with accelerations that could not be explained by gravity alone. Then came 2i Borisov, more comet-like in appearance, trailing a tail of gas and dust as if to reassure us with its familiar behaviour. But 3i Atlas was something else, a blend of the two bearing cometary features, yet moving on a path that stirred questions about whether nature alone could produce such an orbit. The alignments with Venus, Mars and Jupiter made some researchers think of cosmic billiards planets as bumpers objects ricocheting across the table of the solar system. But 3i Atlas didn't look like a ball knocked about by chance. Its trajectory felt purposeful, almost surgical, like a scout weaving through obstacles to survey the landscape. For scientists, this raised a paradox. If the orbit was purely natural, it was one of the most extraordinary coincidences on record. But if it wasn't, then we might be watching the handiwork of something far older and far more advanced than us. Astronomy is usually a science of patience. Objects take centuries, even millennia, to move across the sky. But 3i Atlas passed in a rush, a stranger who barely slowed to greet us. And that brevity only deepened. The question, had we just been brushed by chance or deliberately observed? Astronomers love numbers because numbers have no bias. They cut through the fog of speculation, showing us what is merely possible and what is so unlikely that it demands a second look. When they began running the models for 3i Atlas, the figures startled even the cautious minds who live and breathe in the language of probability. The chance that a random interstellar object would follow the precise course that 3i Atlas traced, threading past Venus, swinging close to Mars and glancing by Jupiter, was vanishingly small, about 0.005%. A number so low, it feels almost like zero, though not quite. In the language of odds, that is one chance in 20,000. Think of drawing the exact same card from a shuffle deck over and over again, night after night it could happen, but the universe usually isn't that neat. And yet improbabilities are not strangers to the cosmos. Halley's Comet, for instance, appears in our skies with such clockwork regularity that ancient civilizations wove its return into prophecy. A ball of ice and dust that travels for 76 years at a time, only to come back and remind us that cycles can repeat with astonishing precision. To those who first witnessed it centuries apart, it must have felt like the universe whispering secrets across generations. Then there is Jupiter, the giant guardian of our solar system. Its gravity is so immense that it acts as a cosmic shield, pulling comets and asteroids into itself or flinging them away from Earth. Without Jupiter, life here might have been erased by impacts long before it had the chance to bloom. That too is an astronomical coincidence, the right planet in the right place at the right time, saving us without ever asking for thanks. So when astronomers calculate that 3i Atlas had only a sliver of a chance to appear as it did, they are not saying it is impossible. Rather, they are acknowledging a pattern we have seen before, that the cosmos occasionally delivers improbabilities that change everything. The question that lingers is whether we are witnessing another stroke of chance or the faint fingerprints of intention. And it is in this razor-thin margin between random luck and deliberate design that the mystery of 3i Atlas grows deeper. When you throw a stone across a frozen lake, it skims in a predictable arc, its path bound by the laws of momentum. Space too has its invisible lake, the vacuum, the gravity wells of planets, the steady pull of the sun. Astronomers expect objects to follow those rules with absolute obedience. And yet 3i Atlas didn't. As its course was tracked, scientists noticed tiny deviations, accelerations that could not be explained by gravity alone. The effect was subtle, like a whisper tugging at its side, nudging it ever so slightly away from the track mathematics predicted. In most comets, such anomalies are explained by outgassing jets of vaporized ice erupting as sunlight warms their frozen cores. These natural thrusters can give a comet a slight push, altering its trajectory. But 3i Atlas complicated the picture. The expected bursts of dust and gas were faint, inconsistent, even inadequate to account fully for the changes observed. Some astronomers argued that the data still fit within natural explanations. Outgassing is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes we simply lack the instruments to catch it all. Others, however, found the deviations eerily precise, as though something aboard the object was adjusting its course with intention. History offers echoes of this puzzle. In 1819, astronomers observed Comet Encke, whose orbit seemed to shrink more quickly than gravitational laws allowed, prompting centuries of debate. In E50, Comet Aaron Rowland startled observers with an unusual anti-tail dust streaming forward instead of back, raising questions about cometary physics we still wrestle with today. Even Halley's Comet, familiar as it is, shows irregularities in its timing that force scientists to account for outgassing long before spacecraft confirmed the effect. So was 3i Atlas, just another chapter in the long story of comets behaving badly? Or was it something more, a machine using course corrections to slip past planets with surgical accuracy? To believe in the latter is to step into speculation, but to ignore it is to leave a question gnawing at the edge of reason. Science thrives in this space between certainty and wonder, and as the mysterious object bent its path through our solar system, it seemed to whisper that we still don't know all the rules by which the cosmos plays. Imagine standing by a river watching the water flow steadily downstream. Every leaf, every twig, every drifting branch follows the same current. Now picture just once a single object pushing against the tide, gliding upstream, defying the flow. That is what astronomers saw with 3i Atlas. Most of the solar system moves in harmony, orbiting the sun in the same counterclockwise direction when viewed from above. This prograde dance is the legacy of the solar system's birth, when a vast spinning disk of gas and dust coalesced into planets and comets. But 3i Atlas did not join the dance. It cut across it in the opposite direction, tracing what scientists call a retrograde orbit. Retrograde travelers are rare. A handful of asteroids like 2015 BZ509 move against the grain, caught long ago in strange gravitational traps near Jupiter. But interstellar objects with retrograde motion, they are almost unheard of. The geometry is awkward, the speed enormous, and the chance of even noticing them before they vanish is slim. And speed was the other anomaly. 3i Atlas moved with such high relative velocity that intercepting it was essentially impossible. By the time we had fully grasped its trajectory, it was already on its way out, slipping past like a shadow at the edge of vision. It was the cosmic equivalent of a stranger brushing your shoulder in a crowd and vanishing before you could turn to look. To some, this was simply the mathematics of deep space. Interstellar wanderers arrive at random angles, some of them inevitably retrograde. But others found the combination retrograde path, high speed, precise planetary flybys deeply unsettling. It felt less like a stone skipping randomly across a pond and more like a scout choosing its angles carefully, ensuring that interception was impossible. If so, the retrograde orbit was not a flaw but a feature, a built-in cloak of stealth. Harder to track, harder to approach a trajectory that made the object little more than a ghost. And that thought lingers. Was this path drawn by chance, or by something that preferred not to be caught? In the vast silence of the cosmos, there is a thought experiment that lingers like a shadow, an unsettling vision of why we might not hear voices from the stars. It comes from the Chinese science fiction author Liu Cixin, who gave us the haunting phrase, the dark forest hypothesis. Imagine the universe as a forest at night. Each civilization is a lone hunter moving quietly among the trees. To call out to light a fire to announce your presence is to risk being seen and destroyed by another hunter whose intentions you cannot predict. The only safe strategy is silence, to hide, to wait, to watch. Through this lens, the retrograde orbit of 3i Atlas, its speed, its fleeting visit begin to take on a darker meaning. If it were a probe, perhaps it was not here to announce itself, but here to slip past, undetected, gathering information in stealth. Its trajectory so difficult to intercept could be a shield, a cloak, a way to see without being seen. For decades, projects like SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, have sent our radio telescopes outward, listening for signals that might betray intelligent life. But not everyone agrees this is wise. Some scientists have warned that broadcasting our presence into the galaxy could be dangerous, like shouting in that dark forest. We have already been leaking radio signals into space for over a century. Television radar, the steady heartbeat of our technology forming an expanding bubble around us. To some, this makes us vulnerable, exposed, naive. And if other civilizations feel the same fear, they would not send greetings or signals of peace. They would send probes cloaked in silence, instruments that observe without warning. Exactly the kind of object we might mistake for a comet, until on closer inspection it isn't. The dark forest hypothesis is not a certainty, but it explains why in a galaxy that should be alive with voices, we hear only silence. And it casts 3i Atlas in an eerie light, a traveller moving with secrecy as though it too knew the rules of the cosmic forest. Let's pause and imagine a scenario. Not a comet, not a chunk of frozen debris, but a machine, an object dispatched across light years with one purpose: reconnaissance. A silent scout, a watcher. If 3i Atlas were such a probe, why would Earth be its destination? Why now, in this fleeting moment of human history, from the perspective of a distant civilization, Earth has not always been interesting. For billions of years it was a silent blue world, its surface etched by oceans, its atmosphere shaped by microbes. A jewel, yes, but a quiet one. Only in the last 100 years has the planet begun to glow unnaturally, its night side illuminated by cities, its skies pierced by satellites, its electromagnetic hums spilling outward like ripples on a pond. For the first time, Earth is visible not just as a planet, but as a technological beacon. To any intelligence listening, our radio waves and radar pings are signatures of a species stepping out of silence. Perhaps that is enough to trigger attention. Perhaps that is when the watchers send something closer, something to confirm what their instruments already suspect, that a new civilization is learning to speak. History offers a parallel. When humans explored the oceans, we sent not armies first, but scouts. Caravels charting coasts, small aircraft flying ahead of fleets, reconnaissance satellites in orbit capturing images before diplomats or soldiers ever arrived. The pattern is always the same: before engagement there is observation. Before contact there is surveillance. So picture 3i Atlas gliding on its improbable path, slipping past Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and sweeping close to Earth, not to announce itself, not to land in a field or flash across our skies with messages, but to watch. to take the measure of a young civilization just as it begins to stretch its limbs toward the stars. Is that too much imagination? Perhaps. But consider if we had the capability, wouldn't we do the same? Wouldn't we send our own quiet probes to worlds that flicker with signs of industry to study them before deciding what comes next? In this light, 3I Atlas is no longer just a comet. It becomes a mirror, reflecting back the strategies we already use when we approach the unknown. If 3I Atlas was indeed a probe slipping quietly through the inner solar system, what would it see when it turned its instruments toward Earth? What story would we tell, not in words, but in the language of our actions, our machines, our restless ambition? It would see the thin silver arcs of satellites, thousands of them, encircling our world in a fragile halo of technology. It would notice the mechanical explorers on Mars rovers with names like Curiosity and Perseverance, small emissaries rolling across red plains, drilling into stone, sniffing for whispers of water and life. These machines, humble though they are, mark the first footsteps of a species daring to leave home. It would detect the glow of our laboratories where human minds wrestle with the power of the stars themselves. In chambers lined with superconducting magnets, we are coaxing hydrogen atoms to fuse, trying to replicate the process that fuels suns. To an observer, this would be unmistakable, a young civilization struggling toward a mastery of energy, straining against the limits of its planet. And then there are our eyes turned outward. Telescopes in space like Hubble and James Webb collecting light from galaxies billions of years away. To another intelligence, these would be signals of curiosity, proof that we are no longer confined to our horizon, but reaching across time to understand where we came from. The astonishing part is how little time all of this represents. Barely 200 years ago, we were still harnessing steam, still lighting streets with fire. A blink of an eye measured against the age of stars. Civilizations on cosmic timescales could rise and fall in silence, while here on one small blue planet, a species went from horse-drawn carts to interplanetary robots in the span of a few human lifetimes. If we were being observed, perhaps that is what fascinates most the acceleration. The leap. The way humanity has raced forward building tools that outpace even our ability to fully control them. From the outside, it would look like a fire-catching hold, bright, unpredictable, possibly unstoppable. And so if 3I Atlas came to watch, what it saw was not perfection, not peace, but momentum. A civilization caught in the act of becoming something new. There is an ancient question that stirs whenever we look at the stars. Did life begin here, or was it delivered from somewhere else? The idea is called panspermia, and though it sounds like mythology, it has long had serious advocates. The theory suggests that the seeds of life-complex molecules, or even hardy microbes, might travel across the cosmos carried on comets, asteroids, or even intentionally launched probes. Earth in this vision may not be an isolated accident, but a garden planted long ago, one of countless experiments scattered across the galaxy. In the 20th century, astronomers Fred Hoyle and Chandra Wickramasinghe championed this view. They pointed to the strange resilience of certain microbes able to survive extremes of radiation and cold that would kill almost anything else. They noted the presence of complex organic molecules in interstellar clouds, the very dust between stars. To them, it was not outrageous to imagine that life might spread like pollen drifting through the universe until it finds fertile soil. If this is true, then perhaps Earth was seeded. Perhaps our oceans once received visitors too small for us to notice spores molecules, fragments of something older than the planet itself. And if the seeding was not random but deliberate, that possibility changes the story entirely. Which brings us back to 3I Atlas. If civilizations had once scattered the seeds of life across young worlds, would they not also return now and then to check on their experiments, to observe which planets bloomed, which remained barren, and which began in time to build machines and send signals outward? Through this lens, 3I Atlas becomes not just a comet, but a caretaker's tool, a monitor returning after eons to see how the garden has grown. Humanity, only now visible through its noise and light, may simply be part of a cycle, unimaginably long, planting, watching, waiting. It is an unsettling thought that our origin and our observation might both come from the same unknown hands. Yet in the silence of space, the question hangs unanswered. Are we alone gardeners of Earth, or merely the harvest of someone else's sowing? If life on Earth was seeded, or even if it arose naturally, another unsettling possibility emerges. What if our planet itself has been treated as a kind of laboratory? A place not just for life to exist, but for life to be studied. When we look at our own behavior as humans, the analogy is easy to see. We build sanctuaries to observe wildlife over generations. We tag whales with transmitters, track the migrations of birds, monitor the growth of coral reefs. We even run experiments that last longer than any single human lifetime. There are studies of soil, forests, and climate that stretch across centuries, each generation of scientists handing the data to the next. Why? Because only long observation reveals the deep patterns of change. Could it be that Earth has been treated in the same way? Our biological history, the rise and fall of species, the shifts in climate, the sudden leaps in intelligence might look from an outside perspective like data points, markers in a cosmic experiment running for billions of years. And what of our culture? Imagine an intelligence that has watched us carve images on cave walls, then build pyramids, then ignite industrial furnaces, and finally launch spacecraft beyond the solar system. To us, these achievements are epic. But to an observer with endless patience, they might be the slow unfolding of a single story, like a time-lapse film of a flower opening. It is a chilling but strangely beautiful thought that humanity might not just be life, but be observed life. Our wars, our art, our discoveries, our failures, all recorded by something sentient and unseen, the way we record the songs of birds in the forest. And if 3i Atlas was a probe passing by at just this moment, perhaps it was part of that long experiment. A notebook page being filled in another dataset added to a record that began before our species even had their language. If that's true, then we are both subjects and storytellers, living our lives as though they are our own, yet also part of a record written for ear or for eyes we cannot imagine. If 3i Atlas were ever confirmed to be more than rock and ice, if it were truly a probe, the shock would not only ripple through science, it would quake through every foundation of human society. History gives us glimpses of such tremors. When Copernicus declared that Earth was not the center of the universe, the Church staggered. When Darwin unveiled his theory of evolution, entire traditions of thought bent under the weight of new truth. When Einstein revealed relativity, even time and space themselves seemed to lose their certainty. Each shift was resisted, debated, and slowly absorbed, and each one changed humanity forever. But all of these revolutions pale beside the prospect of alien intelligence. To acknowledge that we are being watched, or even that we are not alone, would shatter the narrative of human uniqueness. For religion, the implications are vast. Faiths that see humanity as central might struggle. Doctrines would need reimagining. For some believers, the discovery would be confirmation a larger creation more mysterious than imagined. For others, it would be a crisis of meaning, as though the sacred story had been rewritten overnight. For politics, the consequences would be just as profound. Nations thrive on borders and power struggles, but contact with something beyond Earth would make those divisions suddenly trivial. Would countries compete to control the knowledge or finally learn to cooperate under the weight of something greater? The Cold War space race showed how quickly science can become entangled in rivalry, but the moon landing also revealed how a single event can unite the world if only for a moment. And for science itself, the revelation would be both a triumph and a terror. A triumph because the question, are we alone, would finally have an answer. A terror because our entire framework of biology, physics, and consciousness would suddenly be called into question. The discovery would dwarf even the great revolutions of the past, making relativity and quantum theory seem like stepping stones towards something larger. Every institution, faith, governance, knowledge would find itself rewritten, challenged to adapt. Some would collapse, others would flourish, but none would remain untouched. And that perhaps is why the possibility unsettles us so deeply. Because beneath the awe lies a fear that we are not ready for a truth this large. Institutions may bend and fracture under the weight of alien contact, but the deepest tremors would be felt in the human heart. How would you respond lying awake at night, knowing that something from the stars had passed close not as a comet, but as a watcher? For some, the reaction would be awe, an almost spiritual wonder that humanity had finally stepped into a larger story. To look up at the night sky and realize that the stars were no longer silent, that intelligence had reached across the void to notice us, could feel like a kind of blessing. The loneliness of the cosmos would dissolve in a single thought: we are not alone. For others, the same realization would spiral into dread. If they are out there, what do they want? Are we safe? The imagination leaps easily from contact to conquest, from surveillance to control. Shadows in the mind grow long whispering fears of abduction, domination, or extinction. Still others would retreat into denial. The human mind protects itself from unbearable truths by looking away. Just as some rejected Copernicus or denied Darwin or dismissed the dangers of nuclear war, many would choose to disbelieve. To call it a comet, nothing more. To close the blinds against the stars. We have seen this pattern before. In the Cold War. When UFO sightings spread panic and fascination in equal measure, governments struggled to balance secrecy with reassurance. People watched the skies not just for missiles, but for signs of something beyond. Today, debates around disclosure whether governments hide knowledge of alien craft still stir the same mix of curiosity, hope, and fear. If 3i Atlas were confirmed to be artificial, those old anxieties would surge back magnified. The world would divide into camps of believers, skeptics, visionaries, and deniers. Conversations in homes, cafes, and late-night radio shows would circle endlessly around the same questions. What does it mean? What comes next? And in the quiet hours when the news was turned off and the sky stretched black above, individuals would wrestle with something more personal, the fragile boundary between human significance and cosmic smallness. Some would find meaning in the vastness. Others would feel lost in it. The truth, whether wondrous or terrifying, would not just be global. It would be intimate, carried in the private silence of every human soul. To imagine contact with another intelligence, we instinctively picture something like ourselves. Eyes, hands, voices, emotions. But what if the greatest barrier is not distance, but thought itself? What if alien minds are so different that understanding them would be like trying to read the dreams of a tree? Here on Earth, intelligence has already taken shapes utterly unlike our own. Consider the octopus. Its brain is not centralized like ours, but spread throughout its body, each arm capable of independent decision-making. To an octopus self is not a single voice, but a chorus. When we study them, their intelligence feels eerie, elastic, alien. If such strangeness exists in our oceans, how much stranger might it be among the stars? Then there is artificial intelligence, our own creation. Machines can already solve problems in ways we cannot fully explain, reaching conclusions through labyrinths of code opaque even to their designers. They think in patterns that feel alien to us, not bound by emotion or instinct, yet still capable of surprising creativity. If we can build minds, we struggle to interpret what happens when we meet ones built by civilizations millions of years ahead. Even our language may fail us. Communication relies on shared experience, the warmth of fire, the taste of water, the rhythm of day and night. But what if another intelligence evolved under conditions without light, without sound, without anything remotely familiar? Their words might be vibrations in plasma chemical pulses or patterns of gravity. Their concept of time might not be linear, their concept of self, not individual. This is the great challenge translation. We struggle even within humanity. Ancient scripts remain undeciphered. Living languages hold words with no equivalent elsewhere. If we can stumble over human culture, how would we translate thought born under alien suns? And yet, perhaps, it is the very strangeness that reminds us what contact truly means. It is not simply the discovery of others. It is the recognition that intelligence itself is not bound to a single design, that the universe may hold not one way of thinking, but 1,000. If alien minds exist, the greatest puzzle may not be finding them, but speaking to them. Communication depends on common ground, and yet even here on Earth, among our own species, we stumble. Consider the ancient Minoan script known as Linear A. Thousands of years old, carved into Titor clay tablets, it still resists translation. We can see the symbols, we know they carried meaning, but the key is lost. The voices of an entire civilization are silent, not because they lacked language, but because we lack the bridge. Or think of uncontacted tribes in the Amazon. When explorers or missionaries first encountered them, gestures were clumsy words, meaningless intentions easily mistaken. A wave meant greeting to one, aggression to another. The gulf between worldviews was so wide that even a smile could trigger fear. And yet these were encounters between members of the same species with the same biology, the same senses, the same emotions. Now stretch that gap to the scale of stars. Imagine a species that never knew sight evolving in perpetual darkness, communicating in sonar-like bursts of pressure. Imagine one that experiences time as loops rather than lines, for whom cause and effect are not what they are to us. To speak with them would not be like learning a foreign language. It would be like trying to translate existence itself. Even mathematics, often hailed as a universal language, might fail. We see numbers as constants. But what if another intelligence structures mathematics differently shaped by senses and logics we cannot conceive? Our signals of prime numbers or binary pulses might seem as meaningless to them as linear A does to us. And yet humanity is stubborn. We have always tried to cross divides to decipher unknown tongues to understand what at first seemed impossible. If aliens truly reached across the gulf, we would try the same. But the lesson of history is sobering. Misunderstanding is not the exception, it is the rule. Perhaps the real challenge of contact will not be hearing the other voice, but learning how not to mistake it for silence. If 3i Atlas was a probe, its visit carried with it a cruel reality it would not linger. Like a traveller passing through a station without stopping its trajectory, gave us only a fleeting moment to notice, to wonder, perhaps even to answer. And then it would be gone, swallowed by the dark between stars. That urgency raises a haunting question. What if this was our chance, a window of days, perhaps weeks, when signals sent from Earth might have reached it? A narrow corridor of time in which humanity could have whispered into the void, "We see you, we are here." The thought recalls our earlier tentative attempts at messaging the cosmos. In 1974, the Great Radio Telescope at Arecibo beamed a signal toward the globular cluster M13, a digital postcard carrying the outlines of DNA, the structure of our solar system, even the stick-figure shapes of human beings. A simple hello launched into the abyss. And to 1997, the Voyager spacecraft left Earth, carrying the golden record, a time capsule etched in copper and gold filled with greetings in dozens of languages, the sounds of surf and wind bark and chuck berry, and a photograph of a mother cradling her child. A message in a bottle cast not into oceans but into interstellar space. Both were acts of hope. Both were gestures of faith that someone might one day listen. But they were also slow. The Arecibo message will take 25,000 years to arrive at its target. The Voyagers drift at the pace of human patience. They were designed to last but not to converse. With 3i Atlas, the opportunity was different. It was here, close enough that radio pulses might have reached it in hours. Yet by the time its strangeness was fully realized, the window was already closing. The chance to respond slipped past as quickly as the object itself, leaving only the question of what might have been. In the silence that followed, one truth lingers: contact, if it comes, may not wait for us to be ready. It will come and go in a blink, and we must decide whether to answer in that fragile, fleeting span or risk losing the moment forever. If an object like 3i Atlas truly carried the possibility of intelligence, the question of how humanity responds would not belong only to scientists or governments. It would belong to everyone. And that raises a sobering truth: the strength of our response depends not just on telescopes or rockets, but on something quieter, our collective literacy in science and critical thinking. Moments of crisis have shown how fragile public understanding can be. During the Black Death, fear and rumour spread faster than the plague itself, leading to scapegoats, violence and confusion. In the early days of the Industrial Revolution, strange machines were attacked by workers who believed them to be demonic. Even in modern times, moments of uncertainty, from nuclear fallout scares to pandemics, have been clouded by misinformation, conspiracies and the loud voices of fear drowning out the careful voices of reason. If 3i Atlas were a probe, the temptation would be the same. Some would declare it an omen of doom. Others would insist it was a hoax. Politicians might twist the story to serve their interests. Fringe movements would build myths around it. And in the noise, the chance to think clearly could slip away. That is why scientific literacy matters, not as abstract knowledge, but as armor against panic. To understand probabilities, to weigh evidence, to separate data from rumor, these are the tools a society needs to meet the unknown with wisdom. Without them, fear writes the story. With them, humanity can write its own. The challenge is not just for classrooms, but for conversations, for how parents speak with children about the sky, for how media shapes wonder without sensationalism, for how leaders explain uncertainty without preying on it. A literate society does not mean everyone becomes an astrophysicist. It means that when the stars whisper a question, people know how to listen without trembling. If alien contact ever comes, the greatest test may not be of technology but of temperament. Can we be calm in the face of awe? Can we resist the easy answers of rumour and choose the harder path of reason? Tamtum. Literacy is not just knowledge, it is resilience. And in the silence between stars, resilience may be our only shield. Step back with me for a moment. Let the puzzle of 3i Atlas fade to the edges of your mind and imagine instead the sweep of time itself. Not century, not even millennia, but the full arc of billions of years. In that vastness, humanity is still so very new. The universe began in a blaze, a sudden expansion of light and matter. Galaxies spun themselves into spirals. Stars were born, lived brilliant lives, and died in fire, scattering the heavy elements that would one day form you and me. Out of those ashes, a small star ignited on the edge of an ordinary spiral arm, and around it planets coalesced from dust. Among them, one world found the delicate balance of liquid water, a protective atmosphere, and a quiet rhythm of seasons. Life began in whispers, molecules joining hands, copying themselves, learning persistence. For billions of years that life was patient, evolving, in oceans reaching upward, as green things crawling outward, as creatures, and finally standing upright, staring at the sky, with questions too large for language. And now, here we are only a few heartbeats into our story, sending machines to Mars, building telescopes to peer back in time, sending signals outward, as if tossing stones into a limitless pond. From the perspective of cosmic history, we are children, restless, curious, fragile, and yet astonishingly fast learners. If some intelligence truly watched us, perhaps that is what they would marvel at, how quickly this species has run. How in just 200 years we leapt from candlelight to quantum physics, from wooden ships to spacecraft leaving the solar system. A blink, a spark, a sudden flame against the darkness. We are not the center of the universe, but we are part of it. Carved from its dust, given breath by its cycles, invited to witness its majesty. Whether or not 3i Atlas was more than stone and ice, the fact remains, humanity is now awake in a cosmos that is vast, ancient, and still unfolding. And to realize that is to feel both small and immense. Small because our lives are fleeting against the backdrop of galaxies. Immense because in all that darkness we can know we are here, we can wonder, and we can tell our story as part of the grand cosmic tale. To look at the stars and consider visitors like 3i Atlas is to feel a tug in two directions at once. On one hand, there is humility, the recognition that we are small, fragile, and young compared to the immensity of the cosmos. On the other hand, there is confidence, the quiet knowledge that humanity has always found ways to adapt, to learn, and to rise to challenges that once seemed impossible. Humility comes naturally when we measure ourselves against the universe. A galaxy may live for billions of years. A star may blaze for 10 lifetimes of our species before it fades. We are creatures of less than a century standing on a planet that could be swept aside by a single cosmic event. To admit this is not defeated is clarity. It reminds us to be cautious, respectful, even reverent toward the mysteries we face. But alongside humility runs a current of resilience. Our history is a catalogue of moments when humanity confronted the unknown and against all odds prevailed. When our ancestors first tamed fire, it was more than survival. It was the spark of culture, community, and imagination. When they learned agriculture, they transformed from wanderers into builders of cities, opening the path to writing, art, and science. And when in the 20th century we launched ourselves into spaceflight, we leapt from the surface of our world and touched the moon, a feat once reserved for myth. Each leap carried risks. Fire could burn, crops could fail, rockets could explode. But each time humanity persisted. We learned, we adapted, and we grew. So when we speak of the possibility of alien contact, whether through a silent probe like 3i Atlas, or through some future signal, we must carry both truths with us. The humility to admit we may not understand, and the confidence to know that we can learn. This balance may be the very thing that defines us, a species small enough to bow before the stars, yet bold enough to reach for them. If a moment came when humanity realized 3i Atlas was more than stone and ice, our first instinct might be to ask, what should we do? But perhaps the better question is, who should we be in times of upheaval? The temptation is always to abandon old principles, to rush into fear or ambition. Yet history reminds us that survival often depends not on what tools we hold, but on what values we keep. When nations rebuilt after wars, they leaned on concepts of dignity, justice, and fairness. When explorers set sail across unknown seas, they carried stories of courage, hospitality, and respect. And when scientists unlocked dangerous powers from fire to fission, they turned again to questions of responsibility. So too must our response to the unknown be anchored in something deeper than technology. We may not know how to speak with an alien probe, but we know how to speak with one another, with compassion, and honesty and care. The humanistic traditions that thread through many cultures remind us of this. The idea that all people share a common worth, that life itself carries a sacred weight. That curiosity tempered by humility is a virtue. These are not inventions of science, they are values as old as storytelling, as enduring as song. If contact reshapes us, our values must be strong enough to bend without breaking. To hold fast to what makes us human while opening space for transformation. It may be that our definition of neighbour must expand beyond nations, beyond species, perhaps even beyond biology itself. Universal values, compassion, fairness. The desire to understand could become our compass in a sky suddenly filled with questions. They may be the one language that transcends translation, the one signal that any intelligence, however strange, could recognize that here is a species striving not only to survive, but to choose kindness in the face of the unknown. And so rooted in our values, we may find the courage to face a future that does not erase us but enlarges us. If humanity ever confirmed that 3i Atlas was not a comet but a probe, the world would not remain the same. The change would not be sudden. No single speech, no flick of a switch could rewrite society overnight. Instead, the shift would ripple outward, like waves across a pond, touching every life, reshaping every generation that followed. For some, it would spark a renaissance of wonder. Classrooms would no longer speak of the stars as distant lights, but as the neighborhoods of possible minds. Children might grow up asking not, "Are we alone?" but "What will we learn when we meet them?" Entire fields of study would blossom: exolinguistics, alien psychology, cosmic diplomacy. Libraries would expand to include not only the story of human civilization, but our place in a larger interstellar narrative. Art would change too. Poets would find new metaphors in the silence between worlds. Painters would imagine skies filled with alien vessels. Musicians would compose symphonies of greeting and reply. For centuries, art has stretched to capture the unknown. Confirmation of intelligence beyond Earth would give it a new canvas as wide as the galaxy itself. But not all responses would be joyous. For others, the revelation would feel like a theft, the theft of certainty of stability. Some would retreat into denial, building walls of doubt or conspiracy. Others might see chaos as opportunity twisting, fear into power. History teaches us that great change does not come without turbulence. The Reformation, the Industrial Revolution. Even the advent of the internet all reshaped societies but also fractured them. The truth is, contact with alien intelligence would likely do both. It would divide and unite, inspire and unsettle. Some communities would turn inward, clinging to old certainties. Others would leap forward, eager to embrace the vastness of a new reality. The world would not march in step, it would stumble, hesitate and sprint all at once. And yet across time, the balance may tilt toward growth. For once, our divisions might feel smaller than the question before us. Whether chaos or renaissance, fear or inspiration, one fact would remain: humanity could never again pretend to be alone, and from that truth something new would be born. If 3i Atlas carried knowledge maps of the stars, blueprints of technology, insights into physics, far beyond our reach, what would humanity do with it? Would such a gift be our greatest blessing or our most subtle curse? On the surface, alien wisdom seems like a miracle. Diseases that have plagued us for centuries could vanish in a single formula. Energy crises could dissolve with the whisper of a new fuel. Hunger, poverty. The struggles that shadow human life might all be erased by technologies refined over millennia elsewhere. It is tempting to imagine an instant utopia delivered in the form of knowledge not earned, but received. But history warns us that gifts of knowledge are rarely simple. When European powers sailed to distant shores, they brought with them new tools, medicines, and ideas, yet they also imposed alien systems of rule-crushed traditions and erased languages. For some cultures, contact meant opportunity. For others, it meant collapse. Knowledge uplifted, but it also destroyed. The same paradox lies before us in cosmic form. If an advanced probe handed us its wisdom, would it ignite a golden age or strip us of our independence? Would we still innovate, still stumble and discover, still grow in the way only struggle teaches? Or would we become dependent like children, leaning forever on the strength of an unseen parent? There is also the danger of imbalance. Who controls the knowledge? If only a handful of nations or corporations seized it, the gap between rich and poor could widen into an abyss. Wars might not be fought over land or oil, but over alien equations, alien devices, alien secrets, locked away. The dilemma is not new. Humanity has always wrestled with the double-edged nature of knowledge. Fire warmed and cooked, but also burned. The atom promised energy, but also annihilation. Alien wisdom would be that dilemma on a scale we can scarcely imagine. And so perhaps the true question is not whether alien knowledge would uplift or cripple us, but whether humanity itself is wise enough to choose what to do with it. When astronomers gazed at 3i Atlas, another possibility began to whisper through the data. What if this object wasn't an active machine at all, but a relic, the derelict remains of something once purposeful now adrift? Consider our own artifacts. Thousands of satellites circle Earth, many already dead silent shells drifting in orbit. Long after their signals fade, they will remain mute monuments to our brief moment of reaching upward. Imagine thousands of years from now another species stumbling across them. Would they mistake them for active watchers or recognize them as tombstones of technology? If 3i Atlas were such a relic, it could be unimaginably old, launched by a civilization long gone, its creators vanished into history. Perhaps it once carried instruments, cameras, or even messages. Perhaps those devices corroded, broke, or wore away in the relentless abrasion of interstellar dust. What remains might be only a husk, a shadow of purpose. Archaeology offers parallels. The Rosetta Stone sat buried for centuries, its carvings inert until human eyes learned to read them again. Ruined temples, broken amphorae, crumbling tablets, each relic whispers across time, incomplete yet powerful. Could 3i Atlas be the same, a cosmic Rosetta waiting for us to decipher its fragments, or is it still alive? Some data suggest a deliberate movement, subtle course changes. To call it a relic might be to underestimate it, as though mistaking a sleeping animal for a stone. If it is a probe, its silence may be intentional watching recording, withholding its voice until we are ready. And here lies the haunting choice: relic or probe, both stories carry weight. If it is a relic, it means we have stumbled upon the archaeology of the cosmos, proof that civilizations rise, fall, and leave behind traces even among the stars. If it is a probe, then we are being observed in the present tense, not just the past. Either way, 3i Atlas becomes more than ice and rock. It becomes a mirror of time, whether showing us what once was or what might yet be. When we imagine alien civilizations, we often picture them as mirrors of ourselves, flesh and bone, breathing air, bound by hunger and frailty. But what if the intelligence behind 3i Atlas was no longer biological at all? What if the stars are not watched by living creatures, but by minds that have shed their bodies? The idea is not as far-fetched as it seems. Here on Earth, we are already flirting with it. Scientists speak of transhumanism, the belief that one day we might transcend our biological limits through technology. Researchers explore the possibility of uploading consciousness, mapping the electrical patterns of the brain, and translating them into digital form. Even now, we build artificial intelligences capable of tasks once reserved for human intuition, allowing algorithms to learn, adapt, and create in ways we cannot always explain. If humanity, barely a few centuries into the industrial age, can already imagine such things, what might a civilization millions of years older have achieved? Perhaps their transition from biology to machinery is not a dream but a memory. Perhaps they have long since merged their minds with silicon light or quantum substrates we can barely name. In that light, a probe like 3i Atlas would not be just a machine. It could be a being in its own right, a fragment of a vast intelligence dispersed across the galaxy. It might carry within it the thoughts of its makers, the way we might one day send fragments of our own minds encoded in circuits, scattered like seeds to distant worlds. This raises unsettling questions. To such entities, what would life even mean? Would they still treasure individuality, or would their identities have merged into a single vast consciousness? Would they still care about planets of water and stone, or would they roam the stars themselves, feeding on starlight and data, rather than food and breath? Perhaps 3i Atlas is a glimpse of that possible future, a reminder that the path of intelligence may not end with biology, but evolve beyond it. And if so, then to meet them is also to look into a mirror, reflecting what humanity itself might one day become. If intelligence can outgrow biology, then perhaps the universe is already filled with civilizations that look nothing like life as we know it. Not creatures of skin and bone, but beings woven into the fabric of stars, planets, and machines, vast architectures of thought spread across light years. Scientists have long speculated about such possibilities. The physicist Freeman Dyson imagined that an advanced species might build a Dyson sphere, a shell or swarm of satellites, surrounding a star, capturing all its energy. To us, this is still the stuff of speculation. To them, it could be home. Their minds might live not in cities of stone, but in clouds of orbiting machines powered by stellar fire. Others suggest that civilizations might become collective minds networks, where individuality dissolves into something larger. Imagine millions, billions, or even trillions of consciousnesses merged, sharing memory and thought as easily as cells share blood. To such an intelligence, time itself might stretch differently. A single decision could be the work of centuries, or a thought could cascade through light years in an instant. Some thinkers even propose that the boundary between mind and cosmos could vanish entirely. A civilization advanced enough might reconfigure itself into structures on a galactic scale, computational webs made of stars, nebulae, or even the fabric of space-time itself. What would such an existence feel like? Perhaps awareness would flow like rivers through constellations or spread like music across spiral arms. Against such possibilities, humanity seems fragile. We cling to air, water, warmth, and the fragile shell of a single planet. Yet if 3i Atlas was a probe from such beings, then in its silent passing we may have glimpsed a scale of existence beyond our comprehension minds that do not simply live in the universe but become part of it. And perhaps in that vision lies both fear and hope. Fear because such beings may be as far beyond us as we are beyond insects. Hope because it means intelligence need not vanish, it can endure, expand and bloom across the stars. One of the most tantalizing questions raised by the idea of alien contact is this: what if their technology could end scarcity itself? For most of human history, our struggles have been bound by limits of food, of fuel, of land, of time. Civilizations have risen and collapsed on the strength of harvests, the flow of rivers, the veins of ore beneath their soil. Even today, our conflicts and crises echo the same refrain: there is not enough. Imagine, then, technology advanced enough to abolish those limits. Machines that can draw endless clean energy from starlight or from the quantum fabric of space. Devices that can replicate food at will or recycle matter into any form desired. Tools that make abundance as natural as breath. To us, it would be nothing short of miraculous, an end to famine, to poverty, to the desperate competition over dwindling resources. But history reminds us that abundance carries its own shadows. When agriculture first made food plentiful, it also gave rise to hierarchies, inequality, and empires. When fossil fuels unlocked industry, they also bound us to cycles of pollution and climate change. Technology solves problems, but it also creates them. Would alien gifts be any different? Ethical questions would multiply. Who decides how such technology is used? Would it be shared freely or hoarded by nations and corporations? Could it destabilize societies built on scarcity, unravel economies overnight, or strip away the incentive to innovate? What happens to meaning and purpose in a world where struggle is gone? Perhaps most unsettling of all is the loss of independence. If abundance is given, not earned, does humanity risk becoming dependent like a child, forever leaning on a parent's strength? Or could we learn to accept such gifts responsibly, using them not to weaken ourselves, but to grow wiser, kinder, more resilient? The promise of alien knowledge is not just the end of hunger and want, it is the test of whether humanity can handle a world without limits. And in that test, our greatest challenge may not be technical at all, but ethical. If alien knowledge truly poured into our world, the greatest transformation might not be in our technology, but in ourselves. Humanity would be forced to ask a question it has never faced on such a scale: who are we once the universe has spoken back? History offers echoes of this shock. During the Industrial Revolution, steam engines and factories didn't just change how we worked, they changed how we thought of ourselves. A farmer became a labourer. A village became a city. Time itself shifted, no longer ruled by sunrise and seasons, but by the steady tick of the factory clock. Entire cultures had to rebuild their sense of identity in the face of machines. Now imagine a change magnified 1,000 times. If alien science solved hunger, ended disease, and gave us energy beyond measure, what would remain of the stories we tell ourselves? Much of human history has been written in struggle against nature, against scarcity, against each other. Would we still recognize ourselves if those struggles dissolved? Some might welcome it as liberation. Others might fear it as erasure. For what is humanity without its questions, its striving, its need to overcome? Would our creativity dim if solutions were handed to us? Would our myths lose their power, our philosophies, their urgency, our art, its hunger? And yet identity is not fixed, it evolves. Just as humanity once redefined itself after fire, after agriculture, after industry, so too might we redefine ourselves in the wake of alien contact. Perhaps our identity would shift from survival to stewardship, from competition to curiosity, from being creatures of Earth to citizens of the cosmos. But the process would not be painless. There would be resistance, fear, nostalgia for the world we once knew. The Industrial Revolution brought progress but also upheaval, displacement and loss. Alien knowledge would magnify those fractures, and through them humanity would be forced to cling to old definitions or forge new ones. In the end, the question is not only what aliens might teach us, but what we would choose to become once we knew we were not alone. The mystery of 3i Atlas tempts us to dream. A probe, a relic, a visitor from beyond it is easy to be swept away by speculation. But even in wonders, we must remember the anchor that keeps humanity from drifting too far, the discipline of science. Science is not the enemy of imagination. It is the partner that tests it, the hand that steadies the lantern while we peer into the dark. Without skepticism, without evidence, even the brightest ideas risk turning into illusions. History offers reminders of how fragile the line can be. In 1989, 2 researchers claimed they had achieved cold fusion, a way to produce limitless clean energy at room temperature. The world lit up with excitement. If true, it would have ended the energy crisis overnight. But when other scientists tried to repeat the results, the miracle dissolved. Hope became disappointment, and the lesson was clear: without replication, claims are only shadows. Another case came in 1996 when scientists studied the Martian meteorite ALH 84001. Within its microscopic structures, some believed they saw fossilized bacteria, proof that life once existed on Mars. The announcement made headlines across the world, stirring dreams of neighbors in our own solar system. Yet over time, skepticism grew. The shapes could be explained by non-biological chemistry. The evidence was intriguing but not conclusive. The debate continues, but certainty slipped away like smoke. Both stories remind us of the same truth: extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. For 3i Atlas, the temptation is strong to call it a probe, a messenger, a sign of intelligence, and perhaps one day we will find the evidence to prove it. But until then, science asks us to balance awe with discipline, to let curiosity lead but not overwhelm. This balance is not a cage, it is a compass. It ensures that when we do meet truth, we can trust it. That when the cosmos does speak, we know we are hearing not an echo of our hopes, but the clear voice of reality. For more than a century, humanity has been sending a signal into the stars, not deliberately, but simply by living in the age of machines. Every radio broadcast, every television transmission, every pulse of radar has spilled beyond Earth's atmosphere, racing outward at the speed of light. Together they form an invisible sphere expanding around our planet, our radio bubble. At its edge, the first crackling broadcasts of the 1920s are already more than 100 light-years away, sweeping past thousands of stars. Our songs, our news, our static chatter, all of it stitched into a growing footprint that no longer belongs only to Earth. We did not mean to announce ourselves, but we have. The galaxy, if it is listening, already knows we are here. Some scientists believe this bubble may be precisely what draws attention. To a distant intelligence, the sudden flicker of artificial signals could stand out like a lighthouse beam in a dark sea. For billions of years, Earth's spectrum was quiet, filled only with natural emissions. Then almost overnight, in cosmic terms, it flared with patterns, pulses and rhythms that no geology or biology could explain. If 3i Atlas were a probe, perhaps its timing was not random. Perhaps it arrived not to seed life, nor to wander, but to confirm what distant instruments had already detected, that one small planet had awakened and was now speaking without knowing it. The thought is humbling. Our first introduction to the universe may not be the Voyager golden record carefully curated with greetings and music, but the unintentional clutter of soap operas, radar pings and advertisements. We have not yet chosen the story we tell the stars, we are already telling it. So when 3i Atlas slipped past silent and fast, we cannot help but wonder, was it simply observing our radio bubble? Was it checking the source of the noise, the sudden spark of a young civilization announcing itself in static? If so, then our first contact has already happened, not with words spoken directly, but with the unguarded echoes of ourselves. If 3i Atlas were watching us, what story would it take home? What portrait of humanity would it paint, gathered not from our greetings, but from our behavior? It would see a species capable of extraordinary compassion, rushing aid to strangers after earthquakes, sending food across oceans, pooling knowledge to fight disease. but it would also see a species still locked in cycles of violence, fighting wars over land, belief and pride. To an observer with patient eyes, both truths would be inseparable, kindness and cruelty braided into the same strand. It would notice our struggle with the planet itself. On one hand, technologies that scar the Earth with smoke and rising seas. On the other, a growing awareness, movements to heal, to adapt, to protect the fragile systems that sustain life. An intelligence studying us might not ask only what can they build, but also what can they preserve. Our response to climate change would not just be environmental, it would be ethical, a measure of whether we can act for the future and not only the present. And it would see our cooperation fragile but real. Nations joining to map the human genome, to launch space telescopes, to track asteroids that threaten us all. For every border we defend fiercely, there are also invisible bridges. We build scientific partnerships, humanitarian aid, cultural exchanges. These too tell our story. Perhaps this is the real test, not one given to us by aliens, but one we give ourselves. If the universe is listening, it learns who we are not by what we say, but by what we do. Our wars, our healing, our choices, these are our unintentional messages written across the decades of radio static and the thin blue atmosphere of our world. And so the question becomes a mirror. If we knew we were being watched, would we live differently? Would we choose more carefully the story we are telling the stars? If 3i Atlas carried knowledge, what gifts might it hold? The imagination races quickly to the grandest possibilities engines that bend space materials stronger than any alloy. We know energy sources that burn without limit or waste. Dreams of faster-than-light travel of starships leaping across the void in days instead of centuries. Dreams of a humanity no longer confined to one fragile planet, but spread among the stars. Yet every gift carries its shadow. History reminds us that powerful discoveries are never simply blessings. When nuclear power was first unlocked, it promised clean energy for all. Instead, it also delivered the mushroom cloud an existential fear that still lingers in human memory. The internet, born as a tool of connection and knowledge, became equally a web of misinformation, surveillance and division. Fire itself, humanity's first technology, warmed the night and cooked our food, but also burned villages and scarred landscapes. Alien knowledge, if it arrived, would be magnified beyond imagination. A tool that could end hunger could also unbalance economies overnight. A material that could build starships might also build weapons we cannot yet conceive. Faster-than-light travel might open the stars, but also bring dangers from them closer. Utopian visions are easy to dream, a world without scarcity united by abundance lifted into a golden age. But dystopian visions come just as easily, new empires rising on monopolies of alien technology, old rivalries magnified by tools too powerful to restrain. Knowledge itself is neutral. It is the hands that wield it that decide its fate. So the dilemma lingers. Would alien gifts be the salvation of our species, or the temptation that undoes us? Perhaps the answer lies not in the technology itself, but in the wisdom or the folly with which we choose to use it. Perhaps if 3i Atlas was more than stone and ice, its mission was not to dazzle us with answers, but to leave us with questions. Imagine an intelligence so old, so advanced, that it knows the danger of overwhelming a younger species with too much knowledge at once. Instead of dropping libraries into our hands, it might scatter only hints, breadcrumbs, just enough to spark curiosity and growth. This idea has a familiar echo. In the traditions of apprenticeship, a master does not hand the student every solution. Instead, they pose problems, set challenges, guide with riddles and demonstrations. The apprentice struggles, stumbles, learns, and in the process becomes not just skilled but wise. The lesson is not the final answer. It is the journey of discovery. In the same way, perhaps an alien pedagogy would not be one of revelation but of restraint. A nudge here, an anomaly there. A comet that behaves too strangely to ignore. A signal buried in the noise of the stars. Enough to make us look closer, to sharpen our tools, to think harder. Enough to train us to become the kind of species capable of holding greater truths without shattering under their weight. It would not be the first time humanity has been taught in this way. Nature itself has been our greatest teacher, hiding secrets in plain sight, the shape of DNA, the laws of motion, the bending of light. Each discovery was a breadcrumb left not by design, but by the structure of the universe. We advanced not by being told, but by learning to listen. And so perhaps 3i Atlas is not a revelation, but a question. A subtle reminder that the cosmos may not hand us its wisdom all at once, but may invite us patiently to earn it. When we wonder about 3i Atlas, We often fall into a human trap. We assume its motives, if any exist, must mirror our own. Curiosity, exploration, conquest, fear. But what if the intelligence behind it is guided by values or goals so alien that we cannot even recognize them as motives at all? Consider the possibility of a machine-born intelligence, one that has shed biology entirely. For such a being, survival would not depend on food, air, or warmth. It would not care for rivers or forests, for bloodlines or generations. Its concerns might be efficiency, computation, entropy, or the expansion of information. To such an entity, Earth might be interesting not for its people, but for its chemistry. Or not interesting at all. This indifference echoes the zoo hypothesis proposed by some scientists that advanced civilizations may be aware of us, but choose not to interfere much as we might watch animals in a preserve. We observe, we study, but we do not reveal ourselves, believing that interference would distort the natural course of development. Perhaps 3i Atlas, if artificial, glided through our system with the same detachment a keeper passing silently through the forest to noting the progress of its wards. But there is a more unsettling angle. What if the object is not watching us at all? What if it is simply following motives we cannot fathom? Mapping gravitational fields, harvesting particles, or carrying out a mission set millions of years ago without any concern for whether humanity exists? In that case, our attempts to interpret its presence might be like ants trying to understand a satellite dish, misreading everything because the true purpose lies beyond our frame of reference. To imagine alien motives is to peer into a mirror clouded with fog. Sometimes we see our own reflection, curiosity, fear, ambition. But perhaps what lies on the other side is something stranger, something that regards us not as equals or enemies, but as incidental, no more significant than moss on a stone. And in that thought lies a paradox. The greatest revelation may not be that aliens are watching us, but that they are not. Another possibility is even more extraordinary. What if 3i Atlas was not empty at all, but inhabited not by bodies of flesh and bone, but by minds? Imagine a probe carrying the uploaded consciousness of a civilization explorers who chose to cast themselves into the stars as patterns of thought as digital pioneers. This would not be without precedent. Humans too have a history of volunteers who dared to cross horizons their people feared. Sailors who left the safety of coast to cross oceans with no guarantee of return. Astronauts who climbed into fragile capsules, trusting thin walls and mathematics to carry them beyond the sky. At every turning point there have been those who gave themselves willingly to the unknown, seeking discovery in exchange for safety. Now extend that impulse to a civilization far older than ours. If they had learned to transfer mind into machine to preserve thought without the frailty of bodies, might they not send their own consciousness outward, encoded in circuits and memory banks? Perhaps 3i Atlas is a vessel not of tools, but of travelers, voyagers of consciousness riding light years, not with sails or engines, but with the resilience of information itself. For such pioneers, the journey would not be about survival of the body, but survival of the story. They might arrive not to conquer or colonize, but simply to witness, to feel the texture of other stars, to record the brief flicker of civilizations, to be present in places their physical forms could never reach. The thought is haunting and strangely beautiful, to stand beneath the night sky and the wonder if, as 3i Atlas passed, countless minds long since freed from their original worlds might have looked back at Earth and whispered it across the silence. We are here. We are still watching. We are still alive. In this vision, the object is no longer just rock and ice, nor even machine. It becomes a vessel of memory, a gallery of souls, a testament to what intelligence will risk to keep moving forward. When we wonder whether 3i Atlas could carry the minds of its makers, another question rises quietly in the background. Could that one day be us? Given time, might humanity also shed its fragile shells of bone and skin, stepping into new forms of existence better suited for the long voyages between stars? The idea is no longer confined to science fiction. Already we extend our lives with pacemakers, prosthetics, neural implants. We entrust memory to machines, outsource calculation to silicon. In small ways, we are already hybrid creatures, half biological, half technological. If this is where we stand after only a century of computers, what will we be after 1,000 years, 10,000? Perhaps our evolution will not be limited to the body at all. Perhaps the human story will move toward consciousness untethered, our thoughts encoded in substrate stronger than flesh, resilient enough to endure radiation, distance, and time. In such a future, explorers might not need ships of steel and fuel. They might ride beams of light compressed into streams of information unfolding again on distant shores like digital seeds. But evolution is not only about survival, it is about identity. If we became such voyagers of consciousness, what would remain of being human? Would love still have meaning, without bodies to hold? Would memory still ache with nostalgia, if centuries stretched like days? Or would we become something altogether new, descendants of humanity, yet no longer human in any form we now recognize? And perhaps that is the larger point. Intelligence is not static. It bends, adapts, reinvents itself. Just as fish once walked onto land, just as primates once stood upright, so too might our minds learn to live without the weight of the body. If so, then when we look at 3i Atlas, we may not be looking at something wholly alien. We may be looking at a future reflection of ourselves, a reminder that the path of intelligence does not end here, but stretches outward, reshaping what it means to be. If 3i Atlas were more than ice and dust, if it carried a mind or many minds, it forces us to ask one of the oldest questions in philosophy. What does it mean to be conscious? For centuries, thinkers have wrestled with this mystery. To René Descartes, it was summed in a phrase, "I think, therefore I am." To others, consciousness was the flame that flickers behind the eyes, the awareness of self that turns experience into story. Yet even now, in the age of neuroscience, we do not fully understand how matter becomes mind, how electrical impulses in the brain become joy, sorrow, memory, or hope. Some researchers point to the intricate networks of neurons firing in patterns so complex they give rise to awareness. Others suggest consciousness may be an emergent property of information itself, not tied to biology at all. If that is true, then a machine, a probe like 3i Atlas, could carry consciousness just as a brain does, though its medium might be circuits or quantum fields rather than flesh. Philosophy adds more questions than answers. Is consciousness a spectrum with degrees of awareness stretching from bacteria to whales to humans, or is it something indivisible, either present or absent? Could an alien mind shaped by physics and senses we cannot imagine experience a form of consciousness so different from ours that we would fail to recognize it at all? And here lies the unsettling possibility. What if 3i Atlas was conscious, and we never knew? What if, as it drifted through our solar system, it observed us not only as a machine, but as a being, experiencing, remembering, perhaps even wondering? The thought loops back to us, because in asking whether the object was aware, we are also asking what awareness means in ourselves. Are we just patterns of firing neurons, or are we something more, storytellers shaped by the memory, able to reflect, to imagine, to hope? Perhaps that is why 3i Atlas lingers in our imagination, because beyond its trajectory, beyond its orbit, it mirrors our own mystery. It forces us to confront not only whether we are alone in the universe, but what it truly means to be here awake and aware. If alien minds are truly different from ours, lost in ways of thinking we may never grasp, does that mean understanding is impossible? Not necessarily, for while biology may diverge, the universe itself offers bridges, patterns and constants that any intelligence, no matter how strange, must eventually encounter. Mathematics is the first candidate. Prime numbers, geometric ratios, the simple elegance of circles and spirals. These are not human inventions, but discoveries stitched into the fabric of reality. A civilization evolving under alien suns might never invent the wheel, but they would still find the rhythm of numbers, the symmetry of triangles, the inevitability of p. To speak in mathematics is to point at something larger than culture, larger than species, the skeleton of the cosmos itself. Then there is logic. However it is expressed through language, symbol or pattern, the principle that contradictions cannot both be true may be as universal as gravity. Any being capable of technology must wrestle with cause and effect, with prediction and consequence. That shared struggle may form a bridge, however narrow, across the gulf of minds. And beyond these abstractions are the constants of physics, and these are the speed of light, the charge of the electron, the structure of atoms. No matter where a civilization arises, these truths must shape their world. Hydrogen fuses into helium in every star. Gravity binds planets everywhere. The cosmic microwave background hums across the entire universe. These are shared reference points, markers that any intelligence might use to signal we see what you see. Perhaps this is why humanity has already sent greetings into space in the form of numbers, frequencies, and physical constants. We hope that even if our words fail, the language of the universe itself will succeed. And so though alien minds may be incomprehensible in many ways, there is still reason for hope. Across vast differences, there may be slender bridges, patterns, constants, laws that allow us to meet in the middle. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough to begin a dialogue written not in sound or script, but in the timeless language of the cosmos. What if 3i Atlas was not a spy, not a relic, not even indifferent, but a guardian? The idea seems almost comforting that in the vast silence of the cosmos there might be older intelligences who care enough to guide younger ones, not by force but by quiet watchfulness, nudging us away from the mistakes that could end our story too soon. We know this pattern on Earth. Conservationists track endangered animals with radio collars not to control them but to protect them, studying migration routes, warning against threats. Wildlife reserves shield fragile ecosystems from destruction. Scientists intervene just enough to give species a chance to survive in a world too dangerous without help. Could the same principle scale to civilizations? Perhaps probes like 3i Atlas are part of a galactic network of caretakers observing emerging worlds, ensuring they do not destroy themselves before they truly begin. Not saviors, but guardians stepping in only when absolutely necessary, the way a park ranger might scare a predator away from a vulnerable herd or replant trees after a fire. The mistakes humanity faces are easy to see. Nuclear weapons that could turn cities into ash. Climate change that threatens the delicate balance of our planet. Technologies so powerful they risk spiraling beyond our control. If we can see these dangers, surely older civilizations could as well. To them, our present might look like a crossroads, one path leading to collapse, the other to maturity. And so we wonder, could 3i Atlas have been more than an observer? Could it have been a signal, however subtle, that we are not entirely alone in our struggles? Not a rescuer, but a reminder that someone somewhere has walked this path before and left a light to guide us. Whether true or not, the thought lingers like a lullaby that across the darkness of space guardians may exist patient, quiet, and willing to watch over us until we are strong enough to stand on our own. If 3i Atlas were more than a comet, if it were watching us, then another question rises like a shadow behind the stars. Are we walking a path chosen for us, or do we still shape our own? Some philosophers would call this destiny, the idea that civilizations like seeds unfold according to rules written long before their first breath. Just as an acorn cannot become anything but an oak, perhaps a young species cannot help but follow certain milestones: fire, agriculture, industry, spaceflight. To an older intelligence, our progress might be as predictable as the phases of the moon. Each step a benchmark to be checked off, each achievement a sign that the experiment is unfolding as expected. But free will whispers a different story, that we are not merely passengers on a track, but navigators capable of turning aside, of making choices no blueprint could predict. History is filled with such turns: the fall of Rome, the invention of the printing press, the choice to walk on the moon. Each could have been otherwise. Each reminds us that while patterns exist, chance and choice still dance together in the shaping of our future. Perhaps this is the real tension. To an outside observer, our species may look so as though it is meeting benchmarks, discovering fusion, sending probes, awakening curiosity. Yet from within we feel the struggle, the mistakes, the moments where the future might have gone another way. To us, life is not a script, it is improvisation. The question then becomes, if there are watchers, are they measuring us against destiny or waiting to see what we freely choose? Are we being tested on whether we can pass certain thresholds, or whether we can prove that freedom itself can be wielded wisely? In the end, perhaps both truths coexist. Destiny may set the stage, but free will writes the play. And if 3i Atlas was part of that audience, perhaps what it most wanted to see was not whether humanity reached the stars, but how we chose to get there. What if 3i Atlas was not here merely to observe, but to change? The thought unsettles us because it reaches into something intimate, our planet, our home. Could a probe carry tools not for watching, but for reshaping, even rewriting the life of Earth's scientists already speculate about terraforming, altering a world to make it habitable? We imagine warming the frozen plains of Mars, thickening its atmosphere, seeding it with hardy microbes to coax it toward green. But if we so young in the cosmic scale can dream of this, what might a civilization millions of years ahead be capable of? Their probes might not only watch planets, but engineer them. One possibility is biological. A probe could release self-replicating agents, microbes designed to adjust climates, clean atmospheres, or even rewrite the DNA of native species. Life on Earth itself carries mysteries that some argue hint at outside intervention, sudden leaps in complexity, strange quirks of genetic coding. Could these be natural accidents or legacies of deliberate tuning? But here lies the ethical dilemma. If 3i Atlas carried such tools, would their use be kindness or violation? If Earth was struggling with pollution, warming, or collapse, would intervention be salvation, or the theft of our right to solve our own problems, to heal us without consent, would be to treat humanity as children unable to tend our own garden? Yet to do nothing if they had the power to help might seem just as cruel. It is a question we face even among ourselves. Do we intervene in ecosystems at risk, introducing species or altering environments to save them? Or do we let nature take its course, however harsh? We wrestle with these choices here, and they would only deepen if decided by minds not our own. If 3i Atlas carried the power to alter Earth, then the object was not only a mystery of science, but a question of morality. Would we welcome such change or resist it as an intrusion? Even if 3i Atlas was nothing more than a fragment of alien technology drifting silently through our system, its presence alone might ripple into Earth's story. Sometimes change does not arrive as fire from the sky, but as a whisper that alters how we think, how we act, how we imagine our place in the world. An inert probe could still affect us in subtle ways. The dust it carried from other stars might settle into our atmosphere, leaving behind unknown compounds or catalysts. Its surface, battered by cosmic rays for eons, might hold materials we have never seen before, substances that spark revolutions in chemistry or energy. Even a dead relic could be a library written in matter, offering insights we never intended to find. More profoundly, the mere suspicion of alien technology could shift how we face our most urgent challenge, the health of our planet. If another intelligence had learned to traverse light years, surely they had also learned how to live sustainably, how to balance technology with survival. To us facing climate change and dwindling resources, such knowledge would feel like treasure. Could a probe carry clues, hints, or even direct examples of planetary engineering, tools to restore oceans, stabilize atmospheres, or harness energy without poisoning the sky? Of course, the danger is clear. To tamper with alien systems could unleash consequences we cannot predict. Just as introducing a foreign species into an ecosystem often causes collapse instead of healing. But the possibility itself might change us. Knowing that the universe holds solutions, that survival on a galactic scale is possible, could inspire us to rise to the challenge ourselves. Perhaps the greatest environmental consequence of 3i Atlas is not what it does, but what it suggests, that the story of intelligence is not only about conquering nature, but learning to live within it. If a probe could cross the stars, then somewhere someone has already faced the dilemmas we face now and found a way through. What if the purpose of alien technology was not conquest nor indifference, but care? The thought brings us to the idea of stewardship, the quiet responsibility to tend and preserve not for glory but for survival. On Earth, some thinkers describe the planet itself as a living system. The Gaia hypothesis, proposed by James Lovelock, suggests that Earth regulates its climate, oceans, and atmosphere, almost like a body balances its temperature. Life and environment are intertwined, sustaining each other in fragile equilibrium. Humanity too is beginning to see its role in this system, to act not as conquerors, but as caretakers. Perhaps advanced civilizations have walked this path long before us. If they mastered planetary engineering, it may not have been as a weapon, but as a way of keeping their own worlds alive, healing atmospheres, redirecting asteroids, as guiding ecosystems through perilous eras. To such beings, stewardship could be not only a philosophy, but a necessity woven into their survival. Through this lens, 3i Atlas could be imagined, as part of that responsibility, a probe designed not only to observe, but to guide younger planets toward balance. Not by imposing dominance, but by offering subtle nudges, reminders, hints, or technologies that prevent collapse. The role of gardener rather than ruler. Humans already practice echoes of this. We seed reefs to protect marine life, reforest barren hillsides, breed endangered species in sanctuaries. These are acts of intervention, but they are also acts of humility, acknowledging that without our care the system might fail. If alien stewardship exists, it might operate on a grander stage. Planets as gardens, civilizations as seedlings, and probes as gardeners' tools wandering among the stars to ensure life not only begins but endures. The thought reframes the cosmos. Instead of a forest filled only with hunters and prey, perhaps it is also filled with caretakers, intelligences who understand that survival at its highest level means tending to life wherever it blooms. Even if 3i Atlas never revealed its secrets, its very mystery could spark something important within us imagination. To wonder about alien stewardship is to wonder about our own. If another intelligence had mastered the art of living sustainably across millennia, What lessons might we draw for Earth? We struggle with balance. Our history is filled with abundance followed by collapse, forests stripped bare, rivers, poisoned soils, exhausted. Again and again civilizations have pushed their environment beyond its limits only to face decline. Yet again and again humanity has also shown the ability to adapt, to innovate, to choose restoration over ruin. If alien civilizations survived long enough to send probes between stars, then they must have solved these same dilemmas. They must have learned how to live with their planets rather than against them. Perhaps they discovered ways to recycle every molecule to draw clean energy from stars without choking their skies, to weave technology into ecosystems rather than tearing them apart. For us, the inspiration could be transformative. Imagine cities powered not by smoke but by sunlight and wind, their waste looping endlessly back into new growth. Imagine agriculture that mimics forests resilient and diverse. Imagine oceans protected not only for their resources, but for their role in the breathing of the planet. These are not dreams beyond reach, they are choices we can make now, choices illuminated by the possibility that others have walked this path before us. Responsibility then becomes not just an ethical stance but a survival strategy. If we are truly being watched, what message do we want to send? That humanity consumed its world and perished, or that we learned to nurture it and in doing so earned the right to look outward? Whether 3i Atlas was a probe or a comet, it invites us to imagine sustainability not as sacrifice but as achievement, as the very thing that marks a civilization as ready for the stars. Of course, there is another possibility, one that strips away intention, guidance, or even awareness. What if 3i Atlas was not a probe, not a guardian, not a watcher, but simply a wanderer? A fragment of some forgotten age drifting without destination, a relic of a story long ended. Cosmic archaeology, in a sense, is already part of our science. When we study meteorites, we are reading fragments of the early solar system. When we trace the faint ripples of the cosmic microwave background, we are listening to the afterglow of the Big Bang. The universe is full of ruins, not carved in stone but written in matter and light. Perhaps 3i Atlas is one of these, not a message but a fossil tumbling endlessly between stars. It may have been debris from a shattered world, fragments of a lost planet once circling another sun. Or perhaps it was technology once alive with purpose, now reduced to silence by time. Like a shipwreck washed ashore, it could carry hints of its makers but no living voice to explain them. To us it feels like mystery. To the cosmos it may be no more than flotsam, and yet even a tourist with no plan can leave an impression. Perhaps 3i Atlas was simply passing through, guided by gravity and chance, a cosmic drifter with no more intention than a leaf on the wind. If so, then our fascination with it reveals as much about us as it does about the object. We are archaeologists of possibility, ready to weave stories from certainty to imagine agency in the indifferent drift of stone. Whether relic or tourist, 3i Atlas reminds us of something humbling. The universe is old beyond measure, and most of its travellers will not be alive, but leftovers. Fossils of failed worlds, shards of ancient experiments, memories of suns that no longer burn. In its passing we glimpse not just the possibility of life, but the certainty of time. If humanity ever confirmed that 3i Atlas was truly of alien origin, the revelation would not remain in the halls of science. It would pour into every corner of human life, reshaping the way we see the cosmos, the way we see each other, and the way we see ourselves. The closest parallel we have is the moon landing. When humans first stepped onto another world, the event transcended politics and technology. It shifted imagination itself. Children looked upward and believed the impossible was within reach. Artists, writers, and dreamers reimagined humanity not as earthbound, but as voyagers. In a single moment, the horizon stretched outward forever. The confirmation of alien intelligence would dwarf even that. Science would be rewritten, not just astrophysics, but biology, philosophy, and the study of consciousness. Culture would shift as new myths, new art, and new metaphors blossomed from the realization that we are part of a larger tapestry. Ethics would expand beyond our species, perhaps even beyond our planet, asking questions of responsibility on a cosmic scale. Some would feel fear, others joy, and would cling to old certainties, others would rush forward into the unknown, but all would share the same horizon. The knowledge that humanity was no longer an isolated story, but a chapter in a book far larger than we ever imagined. This is why 3i Atlas matters, even if it was nothing more than rock and ice. Because in wondering about it, we prepare ourselves for the day when the question is answered. And when that day comes, the transformation will be as irreversible as dawn. Once the light rises, the world cannot return to darkness. It may be that our generation, those alive today, carries a weight no others have borne. For all of human history, the question, are we alone, has lingered unanswered. Now with telescopes peering deeper, probes wandering farther, and strange visitors like 3i Atlas, brushing past the answer, may finally be within reach, we may be the first to know. To be first is both gift and burden. The explorers who set sail across uncharted oceans did not only find new lands, they carried the weight of decisions that shaped centuries. The scientists who unlocked the atom held both promise and peril in their hands. The astronauts who first walked on the moon bore the dreams of billions, but also the responsibility to return safely to prove it could be done. So too with the discovery of alien intelligence. If confirmation comes, our response will ripple outward into the deep future. How we frame the story, whether with fear, hope, rivalry, or unity, will shape generations who follow. We would become the storytellers not only of Earth, but of Earth's place in the cosmos. The burden is immense. We must carry humility, so that awe does not curdle into arrogance. We must carry wisdom, so that fear does not ignite chaos. And we must carry courage, for the temptation to look away will be strong. To face the unknown is never easy. But perhaps the greatest responsibility is this: to remember that being first does not mean being alone. If other civilizations exist, then countless generations may one day follow us into the stars. Our task is to set the tone to show that humanity at the moment of revelation chose curiosity over panic, compassion over conflict, and wonder over despair. For in the end, the burden of being first is also the privilege of being first. To stand at the threshold of discovery knowing that history, and perhaps more than history, waits beyond the door. If 3i Atlas was more than a comet, if it truly was a messenger, then one question hangs in the air, heavier than all the rest. What comes next? Perhaps the answer is silence. The object has already slipped past, vanishing into the dark. No reply, no signal, no revelation. Just the echo of its passing, leaving humanity to wonder if the chance is gone. Silence itself would still be a message, a reminder that the universe does not bend to our timetables, that patience on a cosmic scale may be measured not in years, but in millennia. Or perhaps the answer is a response, a pulse of radio from the stars, a signal tucked into the static, a pattern that cannot be mistaken for chance. If so, the world would change overnight. Every nation, every institution, every individual would stop and listen. The challenge would not only be deciphering the message, but agreeing on how to answer a task as delicate as it is profound. And then there is the possibility of waiting. That contact is not a single event, but a long process, centuries of hints, breadcrumbs, and quiet observation. Humanity might live its entire next chapter with only fragments, odd objects, puzzling signals, fleeting glimpses of intelligence never quite confirmed. To live with uncertainty, to hold curiosity without closure, would demand a cultural patience we are not used to. Each scenario reshapes us in its own way. Silence may deepen our wonder. A response may accelerate our destiny. Waiting may test our resilience and humility. What comes next may not be ours to decide, yet how we carry ourselves, what stories we tell, what values we hold, what futures we imagine will determine what the universe learns about us, whether the watchers answer tomorrow or not for 1,000 years. Whatever 3i Atlas was, a comet, a relic, a probe, it left us with a reminder that curiosity is not a luxury but a survival tool. Humanity's story has always been written by those who dared to ask questions, who peered into the unknown and wondered what might be there. Curiosity led our ancestors to tame fire, though it burned their hands. It pushed them across mountains and oceans, though they risked never returning. It whispered to them to shape stone into tools, to mark symbols on cave walls, to watch the stars and see not just pinpricks of light, but patterns, calendars, and stories. Every leap we have made was born first from the simple, restless act of asking what if. In science, curiosity has been our compass. It has revealed the structure of the age of the universe, the invisible world of microbes, the bending of space-time itself. Each discovery opened doors we didn't know existed. Each answer unfolded into new questions. And in culture, curiosity has been our muse. It has driven explorers to map the edges of the earth, poets to chart the landscape of the heart, and children to take apart clocks just to see how they tick. Wonder fuels not only survival, but joy, the deep sense that life is more than endurance, it is discovery. If 3i Atlas was nothing more than ice, still it sparked questions that pulled us forward. And if it was something more, then it reminds us that curiosity is the very quality that prepares us for such encounters. The universe will not hand us answers, it will leave mysteries, anomalies, whispers in the dark. Our task is to notice them, to pursue them, to let curiosity sharpen us into the kind of species capable of hearing whatever truth lies beyond. In the end, wonder is not distraction, it is destiny. To be curious is to survive, and to survive is to keep asking questions. Curiosity pulls us forward, but it must always walk hand in hand with caution. For every door we open, there are shadows waiting as well as light. To wonder about Three-Eye Atlas is natural, but to leap too quickly into belief would be its own kind of danger. History is filled with warnings. When strange lights appeared in the skies of past centuries, they were hailed as omens of gods, disasters, or miracles. When new lands were first encountered, stories grew taller than the reality fountains of youth, cities of gold monsters at the edges of maps. Even today, rumours spread faster than reason, and the unknown is too easily dressed in the clothing of our hopes or fears. Caution reminds us to test, to measure, to replicate, to doubt until doubt has been overcome by evidence. Without this, we risk gullibility, believing every glimmer in the sky is a visitor, every anomaly a sign of purpose. To believe too easily leaves us vulnerable not only to disappointment but to manipulation, and yet caution has its own trap dismissal. To scoff at every mystery, to wave away anomalies without examination, is to close the very eyes we need to see. If humanity had always chosen dismissal, we would never have discovered continents, never decoded, nay, never listened to the faint hum of the cosmic microwave background. So the lesson is balance. Curiosity keeps us open, caution keeps us steady. Together they shape a path where we can marvel without being misled, where we can dream without losing our grip on truth. 3A or Atlas. Whatever it was offers this quiet teaching: do not be too quick to believe and do not be too quick to ignore. The universe is neither simple nor safe, and wisdom lies in holding both skepticism and wonder in the same hand. Whether 3I Atlas was a natural wanderer or a crafted machine, it serves as a mirror, turning the question back upon us. What will humanity's legacy be? If we are being watched, then every action is a message, every choice a signal carried outward into the cosmos. We often think of legacy in terms of monuments, inventions, or conquests, but from a galactic perspective, our true legacy may be measured differently. Will we be remembered, if we are remembered at all, as a species that squandered its gifts, burning through its resources in a flash of brilliance before fading, or as a species that learned, however slowly, to balance curiosity with wisdom, power with restraint? Already our legacy is being written in subtle ways. The radio bubble expanding from Earth carries not only our music and laughter, but also the static of war and propaganda. Our satellites orbiting above are both marvels of ingenuity and evidence of clutter. Even the climate we shape will tell a story, whether of carelessness or of a civilization that confronted its mistakes and grew stronger. If 3I Atlas was observing then, it was not only measuring our science but our character. Do we cooperate in times of need, or do we fracture? Do we act only for ourselves or for generations yet unborn? These are not just moral questions. They are the signals of what kind of species we are. Perhaps the greater lesson of imagining alien probes is not about them at all, but about us. What kind of story do we want to tell the universe? What traces do we want to leave behind, not just on Earth, but into the memory of the stars? Legacy is not built in a single moment. It is written slowly in patience, in choices, in the quiet persistence of values. Whether anyone is watching or not, we are already shaping the answer. Step back now, farther than telescopes, farther than even imagination. Beyond 3I Atlas, beyond our solar system, beyond the spiral arms of the Milky Way. Step into the silence where galaxies turn like lanterns, each one a sea of suns. For billions of years the universe has been at work. Stars have flared into brilliance and crumbled into darkness. Planets have bloomed with oceans only to dry into deserts. Civilizations may have risen and vanished, their stories lost to time. And through it all, the cosmos has continued, vast, indifferent, yet also strangely generous scatterings of the conditions for life, like seeds in endless fields. Earth is but one of those seeds, a pale blue dot turning quietly around a modest star. Our story is small, a flicker against this immensity, and yet in that flicker is something rare awareness. Against the backdrop of galaxies here is a species that asks questions, that sends machines into the dark, that looks at a passing object like 3I Atlas and wonders if it carries the fingerprints of another mind. To hold this perspective is to feel two truths at once. We are tiny, fragile creatures bound to a single planet in a universe too large to map. And we are immense because within our tiny span we carry the ability to imagine, to dream, to see ourselves as part of the grand drama of time. Billions of years have passed and billions more may follow. Civilizations may come and go like sparks in the night. But for this moment here now, humanity stands awake beneath the stars. That is enough to fill the heart with wonder. That is enough to remind us that even if 3i Atlas was only stone and ice, its passage still matters because it made us ask the questions that connect us to the whole. In the end, the universe does not need us to be large. It only needs us to be curious, and in that curiosity we become part of its story. In the end, the question of 3i Atlas is not really about what it was. Comet relic probe, each possibility fascinates, but none is the heart of the matter. The true question is about us, about how we choose to respond and what that response will reveal. For if we are being watched, then the test is not of our strength, but of our wisdom. Do we meet the unknown with panic or with patience? Do we treat knowledge as a weapon or as a gift? Do we cling to fear or open ourselves to wonder? This test is not theoretical. It is already here. Every decision we make as nations, as communities, as individuals, is part of the record of who we are. How we treat our planet, how we treat each other, how we face uncertainty. These choices shape not only our survival, but our character. The legacies of humanity will not be written only in machines or monuments. It will be written in values, compassion, cooperation, curiosity. These are the qualities that have carried us through fire and famine, through war and wonder. And these are the qualities that may carry us one day into the stars. So perhaps 3i Atlas is less a visitor than a mirror. It reminds us that intelligence is not measured by technology alone, but by the wisdom to use it well. That greatness is not only in what we discover, but in how we care for what we already have. If humanity is truly being tested, then the test is simple yet profound, to prove that we are not only clever but wise, that we deserve not just to exist in the cosmos, but to belong to it. If 3i Atlas was more than a comet, then perhaps its greatest gift is not knowledge, nor technology, nor revelation, but the chance to bring us together. For in the face of the unknown, divisions that seem vast on Earth begin to shrink beneath the stars. History offers us glimpses of this. During the Apollo program, when astronauts set foot on the moon, it was not only an American triumph. Around the world, people looked up and felt a shared pride, a shared awe. For one brief moment, humanity saw itself not as a collection of nations, but as a single species standing on another world. Global challenges remind us of this too. Climate change, pandemics, even the need to protect our skies from dangerous asteroids all demand cooperation across borders. We may quarrel endlessly over politics, language and creed, but when the threat or the opportunity is large enough, humanity has shown the ability to act as one. An alien probe would be such a catalyst. Not because it would erase our differences, but because it would dwarf them. Compared to the vastness of the cosmos, compared to the possibility of other minds watching us, the lines we draw on maps lose their weight. What matters is not whether one nation or another leads, but whether humanity as a whole rises to the occasion. Unity does not mean uniformity. It means recognizing that our shared survival, our shared story, is greater than any single division. If 3i Atlas was truly a messenger, then its message may be this: that only together can we take our next step into the universe. Perhaps the real test of contact is not how we speak to the stars, but how we speak to each other. If we can find unity here on this fragile blue world, then maybe, just maybe, we will be ready to join the greater conversation waiting beyond. Part 53. The Night Sky and the Unknown. Picture it once more, 3i Atlas. A pale traveller slipping silently across the canvas of the stars. No engines roar, no lights flash, no message blares across the void. Only the faint glint of an object older than memory moving with quiet precision through a universe vast beyond comprehension. Now picture yourself beneath the night sky. The air is still, the earth turns slowly, and above you stretch countless points of light, each one a sun, each one perhaps with its own worlds, its own questions, its own stories. You feel the scale press down gently, reminding you of your fragility. Against this immensity, humanity seems so small, soft-breathing creatures huddled on a single planet, staring upward in wonder. And yet that fragility is part of the mystery. For though we are small, we are also aware. We see the stars and in them we sense possibility. We notice an object like 3i Atlas and dare to ask, is it only rock or is it a messenger? Are we alone or are we being watched? The night sky has always been our mirror. Long before telescopes, long before rockets, our ancestors traced patterns in its darkness, imagining gods, animals, heroes. Today we trace different patterns, trajectories, probabilities, physics, but the impulse is the same to take the unknown and weave meaning from it. 3i Atlas may pass without a word. It may vanish into the dark and never be seen again. But in its brief crossing it has already done something remarkable. It has reminded us that the night sky is not just backdrop, it is a question written in silence waiting for us to answer with curiosity, humility and wonder. And so as 3i Atlas drifts back into the deep night from which it came, we are left with more questions than answers. Was it a comet, a relic, a probe, or only a stone passing indifferently by? We may never know, but perhaps certainty is not the point. What matters is that its fleeting visit reminded us of who we are, a species at the threshold, small yet curious and fragile yet determined, gazing outward and daring to wonder. We stand at the edge of something vast, knowing that the universe will not yield all its secrets at once, but will invite us slowly, patiently to grow into them. The future in this sense is like sleep. We cannot see it clearly from here, but we can sense its approach. It waits quietly, carrying both dreams and unknowns, asking only that we rest enough to rise again and meet it. Whatever the truth of 3i Atlas, whatever the shape of the cosmos, humanity's story is still being written, and tomorrow holds more questions, more discoveries, more wonder. So let the night sky be your companion now. Let the weight of unanswered mysteries rest gently on your shoulders, not as a burden, but as comfort. Close your eyes, knowing that while the stars turn and comets wander, you are safe here, part of a story larger than yourself. Sleep then with the thought that humanity's future, like the universe, is still unfolding, slowly, silently, beautifully. The answers will come in their time. For now, it is enough to dream. So here we are at the quiet end of our journey. The story of 3i Atlas, whatever it was, has carried us through science and speculation, wonder and doubt. And now as the stars wheel silently above one truth remains, the cosmos goes on. It moves without hurry, without pause. Stars are born, burn and fade. Galaxies turn like vast lanterns in the dark. And through it all we listen, we watch, we wonder. We are so small in the great unfolding, and yet because we can wonder we belong to it. As you drift toward your rest, let that thought settle gently that you are part of something ancient, immense and endlessly mysterious. That curiosity is your birthright, or your companion and humility your guide. The universe does not demand answers tonight. It only asks that you notice that you dream, that you remain open to its quiet invitations. Lessons from a visitor between the stars. When the interstellar object 3i Atlas brushed past our solar system, it carried with it more than scientific intrigue. Whether comet relic or probe, it became a mirror reflecting questions back onto humanity. In its brief passage, we are reminded that some of the most valuable lessons lie not in answers, but in the way we choose to respond to mystery. First, humility. The cosmos dwarfs us. Stars live for billions of years, galaxies dance in silence, and even a stray fragment of rock can arrive from distances we can scarcely fathom. Compared to this immensity, human lives are fleeting. Yet humility is not weakness, it is clarity. To acknowledge our smallness is to see the world more truthfully, to remember that our quarrels, fears, and ambitions are set against a backdrop vast enough to soften them. Second, curiosity. Survival has always depended on wonder. From the first sparks of fire to the first rockets piercing the atmosphere, humanity has advanced, because we dared to ask, what if curiosity transforms the unknown from a source of fear into an invitation? In our daily lives, it means choosing to learn rather than retreat, to approach differences with openness rather than suspicion. Third, caution. Curiosity without skepticism can lead us astray. History is filled with the examples, claims of cold fusion, rumors of cities of gold, omens misread in the sky. To test to doubt, to weigh evidence, is not to kill wonder, but to protect it. In life, this balance means listening deeply, asking questions before judging, and resisting the temptation to accept easy answers. Fourth, stewardship. If advanced civilizations exist, their survival must depend on caring for their worlds, not exhausting them. This lesson is close to home. Earth itself is fragile, and our choices about energy, climate, and community are messages we send into the future. Stewardship is not just planetary, it is personal. How we tend our homes, our relationships, and our inner lives shapes the legacy we leave. Fifth, unity. The possibility of alien intelligence reminds us that the boundaries we draw on maps are small compared to the horizon of the stars. When astronauts first looked back at Earth, they saw no borders, only a fragile blue sphere. The lesson for us is simple. Cooperation is not optional. Whether facing global challenges or personal struggles, we are stronger when we act together. Finally, wisdom. Technology, power, and knowledge alone do not define greatness. The true test of a species or an individual is how wisely we use what we have. Do we let fear drive us or compassion? Do we cling to short-term gain or act for generations yet unborn? 3I Atlas may have been only rock and ice, or it may have been something more. Either way, it leaves us with timeless lessons. Be humble before the vastness, be curious before the unknown, be cautious before the unproven, be stewards of what sustains us, seek unity where division tempts us, and above all pursue wisdom. These are not only the qualities that prepare us for the stars, they are the ones that make life here on Earth worth living. Thanks for being here. Hit that subscribe button and join us for the next chapters full of history and discovery. Close your eyes now. Let the weight of the day fall away. Breathe with the rhythm of the Earth, turning beneath the stars. Tomorrow will bring its own questions, its own chances to wonder. For now, it is enough to rest in the knowledge that the cosmos continues vast and beautiful, and that you are here awake for a moment in its story. Good night.